Welcome back to That Rugby podcast, hosted by the Rugby Booth. We are into Super Rugby finals time.
Hell
12
yeah.
teams into 8. Makes no sense, but we continue that way. So we have our first set of quarterfinals, or our first set of finals games, and some juicy matchups, I would say. Standings ended up as they deserve to be, I guess.
Yeah.
From what we discussed during the season, early in the season, throughout the whole season. Husey, thoughts on the matchups this week?
As a Waratahs fan, I don't care. My finals already happened because the Crusaders aren't in the finals. So what more is there? What more is there to worry about? We've already won. This is as good as it's going to get for Waratahs fans. No, seriously, looking at our finals matchups, look, I think everything except for Hurricanes Rebels can present a pretty good matchup. Reds visiting the Chiefs. Chiefs wanting revenge for earlier in the season. Reds wanting to prove they can win overseas. That's going to be a really good matchup. Blues versus Dura. Fiji. This is their second year in the finals. Didn't win last year. They're against the Crusaders. Now they're up against the Blues. Really wanting to get their first ever finals win and just cause an upset. Really, like that would be amazing. And Fiji is a very physical team. We've seen that they have talent. They're always capable of an upset. And then our last one, Brumbies versus Highlanders. Look, Highlanders are no slouches. Absolutely no slouches. This is the one I would say has the best chance to be an upset. Which I guess
Makes sense.
Makes sense. 3v6. I guess it's not 4v5, but still, it's the Highlanders. I think they can hold themselves up and say they've had a decent season. Especially compared to where they were last year. The Brumbies should not be taking them lightly. I doubt the Brumbies will be taking them lightly.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs lose to the Reds. Like, I don't think I'd call that an upset. Like, the Reds are a very, very good team. They've already beat the Chiefs this year. Whereas if the Highlanders did beat the Brumbies, I think that'd be an upset. Because I believe the Brumbies are as good as they've showing that they are towards the end of the season.
And what would you call it if the Rebels beat the Hurricanes?
The end of the world. Potentially.
That's exactly what I had in my head. I had Apocalypse in my head. Yeah. One of the 4 horsemen comes riding.
Yeah, I'd be absolutely flabbergasted. I don't even know what I'd say on the next podcast if we lose to the Rebels.
Okay, let me put this to you. All right, what is a worse season? The Waratahs coming bottom of the table, or the Hurricanes coming top and losing in the first round to the Rebels?
Losing to the Rebels in the first round is the worst season. If you perform that, and then go and lose to it's the Rebels. It's the fact that this team's about to not even be a team anymore, and you lose to them in the first round. That's you. Yeah.
In your home ground. Yeah.
Say the Crusaders had snuck in and they knocked us out. I still would have been like, look, great season. Crusaders are Crusaders. Yeah. You live by that sword, you die by that sword because it's the Crusaders. But the fucking Rebels, who are, and we're going to get onto this, who are arguably having their best season ever, still struggling as any other team, just made the top 8. But we'll get onto that later. But yeah, I believe, especially the fact that your 2-win season has 2 wins over the Crusaders to finish bottom, it's one of those ones where I think if you looked at the whole spectrum of the season, the whole amount of forwards you lost, I think you'd go, the Hurricanes fucked it. Like, this is
right, well, I know who I'm ready for this weekend then.
Yeah, I go, if there's a season to win Super Rugby, past 6 seasons Crusaders have won it, this is the season, and then now the fact that everything has to run through the Hurricanes because the Chiefs did us a massive favour. I did love, had the highlights, not the highlights, the live match updates of the Chiefs versus Blues, and my favourite ever bit of live update was, this is the most tense finish to a 19-point game in the history of Super Rugby, and it was. And then obviously the Chiefs scored, and that allowed us to go top because it took the bonus point away from the Blues, which is awesome, because now it means that everything has to run through Wellington. And I think we can see in Super Rugby how important home field advantage is, because a lot of teams are making use of that home field advantage. So yeah, I think it would be an absolute fucking disaster if the Hurricanes lost to the Rebels. But I do honestly believe we're going to put 50 on them, and send them home. Send them home without a team for the rest of
Well,
their lives.
you're not sending them home. You're just sending them out of New Zealand. Just sending them somewhere else. Who knows? Who knows? Hopefully, a few of them at the Waratahs.
Yeah. Look, let's get on to those Rebels because it's been obviously a very hot talking point. It has been announced that they will no longer be a part of Super Rugby next season. I want to get your thoughts on it first because I want to hear your opinion as an Australian and as an Australian rugby fan because I've got some quite brutal assessment of what the Rebels are and what they've been.
It is disappointing, especially since there was a private consortium bid to take them over. There hasn't been really many details about why that bid was rejected. I'd be interested to know the details around that. Like, were their projections just wildly off? I don't think it would have even been a bad idea to get some more private interest into the game to then put pressure on media outlets and things like that to promote the game better. Look, I think the Rebels is a symptom of the whole poor management of Australian rugby. And to be honest, I think the Rebels should have been the team cut back where the Force was cut instead of the Force being cut. I think for whatever reason, rugby's got this fixation on Melbourne as a city that they want to conquer. And you know what? That's great. And there's a time and place for it, but they're not going about it the right way. Holding Magic Round or Super Round, whatever they call it, down there is an utter mistake. Utter mistake. Instead of putting it in Sydney, and I think the fact that there was a Rebels team there is the reason why it was held down there. But that's just so bad. Like, I was never ever motivated to go down to Melbourne to watch that. Like, and I'm a pretty big rugby fan when you consider it the spectrum of the Australian population. You know, I'm not quite a rugby fanatic like the others are in the community, but I'm a rugby supporter. I enjoy going to the games, but I would never travel down to Melbourne for a super round. Whereas if it was held here in Sydney, absolutely. And that's rugby's heartland is here in New South Wales. So, look, I think the Rebels, it's disappointing that they're out. I would like to see the return of them or another Melbourne based team, maybe under a different branding. I never really got the whole Rebels thing, never really liked their logo or their colours. It was all pretty generic. It looked like something that you could make a custom NFL team in Madden '08 out of. You know, you look at all of the other Australian teams, and maybe I'm missing something here with the Rebels logo, right? But the other Australian teams, it's all pretty obvious what they link to. You know, the Waratahs is the state flower of New South Wales. Queensland Reds, it's a koala. Western Force, it's a swan for the Swan River. You know, the Brumbies, they've got the mountains there in the background for their geography. Like, it's all pretty obvious what that's all about. The Rebels, it's like that must be some piece of history. I'm probably just missing something here. Maybe it's more obvious to people from Melbourne, but I guess that's not the point. The point is you want it to have a broader appeal than that. So, yeah, look, I think it's sad, but it's probably inevitable with how things have been going. However, this is just in time. I think the bigger piece of this is just in time for when the Jaguares could join in and take their spot, because I think that's what has previously been said, is that the 2025 season is a season for being able to renegotiate some of the terms of Super Rugby Pacific. So that's probably more of the pressure. It's probably Rugby Australia is probably saying, well, we need to get the Jaguares in there, need to get the Argentinian money coming through. So we'll sacrifice the Rebels on that altar. But as I said, I've never been a fan of shrinkage. I think, like, shrinking a league, it's never a good sign. I am unaware of any cases where shrinking the league has resulted in a bounce back. Maybe there's some historical example. None that come to mind. None in recent memory that I can remember. You know, I think it needs to be done the right way. I think the NRL is doing a good job of it. AFL are talking about retracting, which is good news for all people without brain damage. So they've obviously expanded probably a bit too fast, too far. So I'm in favour of expansion or just a whole reset of the competition. But whatever action needs to happen next needs to be drastic. We can't keep doing things piecemeal. We can't keep doing shitty media where it's never talked about. This game needs to be talked about. There needs to be shake up. We need to put this stuff on the nightly news. Most people don't even know, like, unless you're looking out for rugby stuff, it doesn't appear in your media. It doesn't show up unless it's to do with the code wars with NRL, right? I think the Rebels is a symptom of all of that. They're a victim of all of that. And I feel for the players and the coaches who put their heart and soul into, as we said, what is their best season so far.
Yeah. That was a very, nice way, I think, of putting what I'm going to put out there, which is I think the Rebels has been a disaster since it started. And as you said it, there was this fascination with Melbourne and getting a rugby team in there. And obviously Melbourne's is a sporty market. Like, there is ability to do sport in there. The AFL, obviously, biggest one there. But they love all type of sport, rugby league. You can see it with their soccer or football. 2 teams in there, able to do it really well. The Melbourne Rebels have never been set up for success. The only people I slightly feel bad for are the players currently at the moment. And even that, I sit there and I go, this is a business. Like, as much as you can sit there and go, oh, rugby, like someone said it on one of the talk shows, rugby's a passion for these players and they want to be playing it. But it's a business, it's a job. I feel like as a rugby player, you're more should be considering yourself as an entrepreneur than it being a job. And the reason I say that is because Super Rugby, I believe they did a study, and a Super Rugby career lasts 2 to 3 years max. For the average Super Rugby career. So you're lucky if you go past it.
I think it's the same with most professional sports people. Like, they had the same stat in the NFL. Your average career is 2 to 3 years. I think that's the same with most professional sports. But you look at your average player, not your good players, but your average player, that's how long they last.
Exactly. And so I go, you're for 2-3 years, you're trying to make as much money / trying to crack it so you can make money elsewhere, trying to do everything, trying to build your brand is how I see it, and that's why I kind of consider themselves. So look, it sucks for them, but also as this is a business, when a company, does layoffs, we feel bad for the people who are getting laid off, but they normally find their feet. These players will find their feet. You feel bad for the ones that were on the outer, or like the growing ones that were actually developing because of it. But the good players are going to find their feet. If you're a good enough rugby player, you'll find a club somewhere else. You'll get a professional contract. Saying that, they also joined a club that was in debt, and they may have not have known that, but when you join or when you find a job and you choose the company that you're working for, you're more than welcome to do your own research. I am still in disbelief that they signed Taniela Tupou when they're in so much debt. Like, I go, there was just, like, they had one of their best recruiting years. How the fuck do you do that when you're in $20 million of debt? Like, it was so poorly run already, and I went, okay, I've got to look at this from the start. So they started in 2011. The Rebels' first season was in 2011. It took 2 years to kind of get the bid and everything over there. When they were bidding for this 15th team in Super Rugby, when it was expanding to 15, there were 10 separate bids. I think 7 were from Australia, 2 were from New Zealand, and there was one, I can't remember where the other one was, might have been the US or something like that. The 7 that were in Australia, there was like Gold Coast, a second New South Wales team, a second Queensland team, and then the rest were all from like Victoria region. So there was a lot of interest in Victoria. In the end, Australian Rugby SANZAR decided to go with the Victoria Rugby Union backed one, which was the Rebels, that had a backing of some media mogul. So started that in 2011. In 2015, at some point, it all got sold back to the ARU. In 2015, ARU, Australian Rugby Union, decided to sell it off because it was costing them too much. It cost them like half of their surplus for the year in 2015. So already 4 years in, we know it's not a financial success. So 4 years in, we can go, 2017, as you mentioned, the Force get axed. So we already knew it wasn't a financial success, but we decided to axe the Force, which had the backing of one of the richest men in Australia. 2024, we obviously get their financial issues laid bare. Now, the only issue I have is that's one part of the problem. The running of the business, it's not a good business. The Melbourne Rebels are not a good business. The second thing is they fucking suck. And let's not hide away from the fact that they are a terrible team. It's maybe not the players, it may not be just the coaches, but as a whole organisation, one of the worst sport organisations in the world. So 2011, first year in the comp, they placed 15th out of 15. Then they went 13th, 12th, 15th, 10th, 12th, 18th, 9th, 11th before 2020. So highest result was 9th in 2018. And all that time, not one winning season. Then we go into Super Rugby AU. They do all right in in the 2020 version where they finish third and actually make their first finals and not a full comp, but they actually go positive. They win 4 games from the 8, draw 1, lose 3. They then 4th in 2021, 9th in the Trans-Tasman 2021, and then 10th 2022, 11th last year. This year 8th, but again they've only won 5 games, lost 9, so haven't gone positive.
Yeah.
So I did all the maths, and I worked out 197 games played up until this year. So not counting this year because they haven't finished this year. 63 games won. So they won 63 out of the 197, leaving them just above 31%. I think it's 31.9%, so 32 if we round it up. For reference, the worst franchise in winning percentage in American sports, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 40%, which is what I could find, that are still active, that have played more than like 200 games. 40%. Yeah. I thought, you know what, let's go closer to home. Let's go to the NRL. A team that came in 2007, the Gold Coast Titans, so came in 4 years earlier, had played double-ish the amount of games, have a 39 win percentage. So not great, but still 39. In that time, 4 finals appearances. I just went, they're bad. They are historically bad as a franchise that has been around for this long, that they're this bad. And the fact that a 5-9 season, because you get into the playoffs, because it's an 18 playoff, is your best season is ridiculous to be saying. And in this season, who have they beat? They have beaten the Force, didn't make the finals. Moana Pacifica, didn't make the finals. Waratahs, didn't make the finals. They beat the Drua at home, who we know the Drua can't travel. And then they beat the Highlanders. So they have one good win to their name. And I just go, for a season that's your best season, and you bet a team like, we didn't even expect the Highlanders to be as good, and they've finished 6. I go, the only possible way they save this, and look, they've had some close games. I give them credit, like the past few weeks. I think the Chiefs, they lost by 3. The Reds, they lost by 2 by 4. Is if they actually do the unthinkable and beat the Hurricanes. Because
they have got 6 bonus points, which is decent amongst the teams. If you look at the teams in the final, Drua of 2, Highlanders of 4, Reds 8, Chiefs 7, Brumbies 4, Blues 7, Hurricanes 8. So they've got it's not bad a total of bonus points, which shows how close they've been in those games that they've lost.
And totally, it's not a bad season, but for this to be your best ever season is absolutely fucking ridiculous. So I went one step deeper, and I went, let's look at crowds. 2011, they averaged 17,000 in their first season, which is a pretty decent number. Now, remember, 2011 Rugby World Cup year in New Zealand, so a lot of hype around that. Obviously, they're being brought into the comp, and Super Rugby still hasn't yet hit the peak for the drop.
Yeah.
2012, 14,000. 2013, 12,000. 2011, 11,000. 2014, 11,000. 2015, 10,000. 2016, 10,000. 2017, 8,000. 2018, 10,000. 2019, 9,500. So just a steady decline before it went neutral. Now that stadium, Amy Park, can hold 30,000, so they're filling a third of it, which, again, not the worst thing. But then 2024 brought a new low when they have the lowest attendance of anybody in a game, and it was the first game of the season against the Brumbies where they had 4,000 people watch them get absolutely demolished. After we found out that they were having troubles, their fans just, not enough people care about the Rebels. They also, as you said with Super Round, dumbest place to hold it because they averaged 10,000 people for those 3 days. Yeah. And I just go, they haven't released figures for 22, 23, 24 fully yet. And 24, that's all I could find was that they had the lowest attendance was 4,000 and those 3 games of 10,000. To compare this to the NRL in Melbourne Storm this last year averaged 21,000 fans. They averaged 15 to 18,000, not including finals appearances, where finals they normally get upwards of 30 plus. And I just go, you can tell that a team that is shit, poorly run, and fans don't care about is never going to work. They knew this probably in 2015 because it didn't get a lot better. This is a good thing for Australian rugby. As bad as terrible as it sounds, I think sometimes, like franchisees, you open a franchise in a location thinking it'll do well and it doesn't perform because it's not good enough. The people running it aren't good enough and the people around there just don't care enough. And sometimes, that happens in all businesses. I think this is a good thing for Rugby Australia. I think it's a good thing for Super Rugby. I agree. I don't like that the competition drops a team, but I think if it wasn't going to work and it wasn't working, I don't think we were going to get to a point where the Melbourne Rebels were going to be successful financially, player-wise or team-wise and fan engagement-wise. It just wasn't going to happen. They tried. It wasn't going to happen, and I agree with you. 2017 is the most damning thing when they got rid of the Force over the Rebels and tried to keep this thing alive because it just isn't. It isn't it. They ain't it, Chief. And I just think,
it's a horrible decision. I did not like it at the time. I do not like it now. For me, I don't know. I think this is going to come. I think I don't know if Super Rugby Pacific can stay in its current format. The more and more I think about it, the more and more I think we're going to have a split between Australia and New Zealand, and to bring on more Australian teams and have a domestic Australian competition because that'll get people more interested than having a Trans-Tasman tournament where the perception is the Australian teams can't beat the New Zealand teams, even though that's not the reality. As we've seen with the Brumbies the last few years, the Reds, Waratahs beating Crusaders twice this year, it's not the reality. That's the perception. I think you need to sort of it needs to be sort of a big reset. Promote some shoot shield teams into the upper level. The Waratahs, again, I think that I love the Waratahs. They're my team. But you can't go on being the New South Wales Waratahs. You can't have one team for an entire heartland state. You need to split that up because you need to have more teams in this area. Just create two separate competitions and then have a Super Bowl type competition at the end. Winner of Australia versus winner of New Zealand. And I don't know. It's just it can't. This is a clear evidence that it can't go on. You look at the A League, right? You look at NRL. There's a couple of teams in each sort of major geographic area, with the exception of Melbourne. But you could have in the NRL. But Melbourne's got a couple of A-League teams. You can get a couple of Melbourne rugby teams. You've got all the shoot shield teams all around Sydney. You could promote a couple of those into an upper level. Queensland, you could get some more Queensland teams in there. You could have the Brisbane, and you could have Gold Coast, things like that as well. Western Australia, keep their team. ACT, there's room for it to work here in Australia. I don't know if the current competition as it is the right vehicle for that. Rugby Australia's got some serious thinking and strategizing to do.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. I think you could definitely split into conferences and have still play cross conference because the big thing, I know John Kerwin as well mentioned this a couple of days ago, like a Heineken Cup or a Champions Cup style competition. You just need to do something, and I think. What I think is good is we would have gone in the motion of this Melbourne Rebels things didn't happen. If you know what I mean? Like, we would have just kept ticking over boxes, kept doing the same thing. Yeah, maybe we were in Hangar areas. We've got until 2030 to decide. Now we've got a team. Everyone has to look at it and go, what is actually going to be best for this competition? How do we deal with this? How are we going to get it? Kerwin want the idea of, a Japan league. I think it was a US-based league with Higuares, a New Zealand and an Australian. So you'd have 4 conferences, 4 winners go into a semi-final, final playoff, something like that. Again, there is a way you could make this work. We're not going to go too deep into that.
Or top two, you get 8 teams, something like that.
Again, a lot that needs to be thought about. I think the Rebels not working brings about this conversation, and that's why I think it's a good conversation in the end, in the long run for everyone, for the Super Rugby, for everyone involved. I think it's good. It's good. It sucks, yes, for the players and the staff and everyone who's enjoyed the Rebels and loved the Rebels. But A, weren't good enough. B, weren't good enough in head office. C, fans didn't care. So in the end, had to go.
Yeah, at the end of the day, what it comes down to as well is administration. And you hit the nail on the head, fans not caring. How do we make the fans care? You've got to get it in the media. Whoever's been running the game has not been pushing the media to talk about this. The media no longer is an independent reporting body, right? You look at they're tied into these sports competitions as well with media deals, and just in general, they say what they're paid to say, right? I know it sounds a little conspiracy theorist, but it's basically true. You basically need, especially for sports, right? You need to be putting pressure. You need to be spending the money on getting the media talking about this, on getting the reporting in, to have fans actually care about it, to make it visible, to know that it's on, right? That is the key. You need engagement. You need fan engagement of non-existing fans. You need to be reaching those people who aren't existing fans or were fans, and bringing them back into the fold, making them care about the game again. So that's really the biggest mess. And as I said, the Rebels have suffered because of it. But I think I agree with your point that they were probably pretty ill-conceived from the start. But that just shows, again, it's another piece of evidence in the stack of it, that is the incompetency with the way rugby show's been run for the last decade.
Yep. Yep, couldn't agree more. Shall we move on to some brighter things in the rugby world, which is Joe Schmidt naming his first 14 players of the two teams knocked out already, the Waratahs and the Force. 14 players named for the Force: Nick White, Ben Donaldson, Kurtley Beale, Isaac Rodder, Hamish Stewart, Bailey Kunzel, and Carlos Tizano. The Waratahs, my friend, do you want to read out?
We've got Jakey Gordon, Miles Amatisero, he's really come on late in the season. I was a bit disappointed with him at the start, but he's really improved towards the back end of the season, I think. Tane Edbed, Charlie Gamble, Dylan Peach, Langi Gillison, and Lalakai Foketi. So I think one of the really interesting omissions there is Mark Nwangani-Tuwase, obviously headed to NRL season, but also Izzy Parisi, who I don't think is injured, but it's still been left off, but is heading to French rugby next year. So I think Schmidt is firmly laying down his stance on, I guess, loyalty in a way, or like playing in the code or playing in the region. It's Parisi, I'm more surprised about than Nwangani-Tuwase. I'll say that much. Like Nwangani-Tuwase, I think it was made pretty clear from the vibes Schmidt was giving off early on that he wasn't going to be picking Nwangani-Tuwase because he's going to NRL. Like that, I feel like that was just, I'm not surprised about that at all.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all by any. I think he's done the idea like, hey, if you are loyal to Australian rugby, we will be loyal to you. And as we saw from Jake Gordon trying to get a release to go play overseas, Australian rugby say no, is the idea that they want him here and he's ticked in the squad. And it's the same, like, if you want to be playing for the Wallabies and you want to be in this training group, you've got to be playing in Super Rugby. It helps your case. And in an argument point, both of those guys are fringe Wallabies. I know Marky Mark was starting to stamp his foot in it, but changing sports completely, I think it's understandable when it's not like you're winning anyway. So, currently up until this point with him. So I kind of go, I like a lot of what he's done. I like getting Charlie Gamble involved. I like, again, we talked about Kurtley Beale. Now, again, this is 14 players. I think he'll have a 36 training squad, and none of these players made the finals. So this isn't going to be the final team, but I like that they've said, Kurtley, you've got a place here. And I just like every single player they've named there. I like the selection. The only thing that stands out, obviously injuries taking names, but no front rowers. Which we talked about heavily as an issue for Australian rugby currently at the moment, is the lack of front rowers. It will be interesting to see how the squad makes up of that.
Yeah, it's going to be very tough for the Wallabies, but I have faith in Schmidt. He'll know what he's doing.
He does know what he's doing. Sevens wrapped up in Madrid over the weekend. Your Golden Girls getting a win, the French winning the men's division. At first, when I first heard about the Sevens being announced and how it was like a competition leading all the way up to the final in Madrid, I thought that was a great idea. I was like, this is awesome. I've decided it's a shit idea because Argentina have been quite clearly the best team in the comp. Won the league style of it, for then the final to happen and then them lose to France in the final on just a one-off game. I just thought isn't very Sevens-like. But I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I just feel like I don't mind the idea of it, and I don't mind if we said, hey, look, Madrid's worth like double points, but it feels pointless to have the whole season to then get into the finals to then decide who a winner is from the finals. Just seems strange to me. Not the end of the world, though, because the biggest seven thing that's going to happen this year are the Olympics. And obviously a lot of players have made themselves available. I know, obviously, DuPont's the most famous one, who decided one week he's going to win the Champions Cup, next week going to win the Sevens, does what he wants, best player in the world at the moment. So DuPont there, Hugo Keenan from Ireland's made the switch over. I know a couple of the English female Red Roses have made the switch to go and play for the English side as well. I'm very excited for the Sevens Olympics. I'm going to put you on the spot. Who do you think wins Sevens Olympic gold in the men and women, my friend?
Well, Australia's going to win it for the women. I can be pretty confident about that. Men's is a harder one to predict, I guess. Yeah. Argentina have been pretty good, but France is playing in France. Yeah, I think it might be France.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it might be. I think they might. They'll be like, oh,
France.
Yes, this is the same as winning a Rugby World Cup. We won gold in the Olympics. It's the same thing. Yeah.
I have, obviously the New Zealand woman, which it'll be one of those two, I imagine, New Zealand or Australia, and then anyone but France. I can't stand France winning it.
I know that's what you want, and I respect that, but I would love for Argentina to win it. I think that
would be a very cool way to end this season as well. Did all the heavy work during the season, carrying the league. Ireland's another dark horse who went deep.
they were on my radar as well.
And you can never count out Fiji as well. As bad as their season's been, they got rid of their coach a couple of tournaments ago. You can't count them out. If they are in the big game, they tend to win it. Second to last thing for today, regular season bolters. So obviously we've just wrapped up the regular season going into finals of Super Rugby. So I thought, let's have a couple of our bolters from the regular season. I will start with my All Blacks. I think Billy Proctor's the name on everyone's lips at centre. Had a fantastic game against the Chiefs a couple of weeks ago where he played at the level of Anton Leonard-Brown, who is a current All Black. Also can show that he can play up to that level of Eriko Ioane, who's not having his best season. So there's going to be lots of questions for that centre position at 13. So that's an easy one. The one that's kind of come out of the blue for me, especially over the last few weeks, is Noah Hoffman from the Crusaders. Now, the Crusaders have looked a shit ton better with him running the ball. He very much reminds me of a TJ Perenara, Antoine Dupont running the ball ability, scrum half who likes to run. And I remember when the Crusaders against the Blues brought on Mitch Drummond, who has an All Black cap to his name, and just the level of halfback play dropped dramatically. And I was like, I think Noah's like 21, maybe 22.
He's 21.
21.
He's also born almost the same day as me, so I like
congrats, mate. Yeah. No,
I like him now.
And he's just been fantastic. And I know the halfback, so scrum half position is a very tight battle in New Zealand rugby. We've got TJ Perenara, Kortstrata, Falau Whakatava, Finlay Christie, and that's all without Cam Roigard being mentioned. But another one to put on your radar. Hughesy, your Australian bolters after the regular season.
Well, it's easy because they are bolters on the field and they're bolters off the field. Two young wingers, Tim Ryan, the Junkyard Dog, and Darby Lancaster from the Melbourne Rebels. I mean, two superb wingers, two superb finishers. With Marky Mark not in the squad, there's an open wing position that is up for grabs. I think winger is one of the positions that Australia has got a surplus of talent at. These two, you've got Corey Toole, you've got obviously Korobete, Dylan Peach has been named in that extended squad as well. Even Tom Wright can play on the wing as well and has done that well. And there's even more names to keep going on. But I think these two are really, and I think what's great about Tim Ryan is he's He reminds me of the honey badger. You know, that was when Australian rugby was really. It's funny to say, Australian rugby had a good time when the honey badger was on The Bachelor. You know, it's like people actually it got people outside of rugby interested in rugby. So you know, having a nickname like that, having a player with a bit of a difference maker about them on and off the field with a name like the Junkyard Dog is a great thing. And I think Darby Lancaster was just a fantastic player for the Rebels this season. Consistent, knew how to score tries, which is basically all the winger is asked to do. And yeah, they're my two bolters for Australian rugby. Nice. And there's a few. I'm sure there's some other names people will throw in there, but you know, when you think of this season and the young players that have really come to the forefront that haven't already made a bit of a name for themselves, like I think Ben Donaldson has had a fantastic season, but I wouldn't call him a bolter, you know, because he's been in a Wallabies jersey, right? So that's why I've picked these two.
Nice. And to finish, semi-final time, quarter-final time, who are you picking to make it to the semis this week?
All right. So, obviously, the Melbourne Rebels.
Okay.
Lock it in, Eddie. That's happening purely because I think the universe hates you and wants to see it happen. We'll see. The actual predictions, as much as my heart is with the Rebels, my mind is with the Hurricanes. The Reds, I think, can take the Chiefs. I'd love to see that. The Chiefs haven't been... They've had games where they've just been completely off their game, and I'm just hoping the Reds can catch them in a game like that. The Blues should take care of business against Fiji at Eden Park, and the Brumbies will have a close game, but they'll win it against the Highlanders.
I like a lot of that. Obviously, my Canes are going to fucking dominate the Rebels and send them and their team packing to the afterlife. And then I think I agree with you. I disagree. I think the Chiefs pull it out, but I think the Reds are going to make that one hell of a game. I think that's going to be the game of the round. No surprise, 4th versus 5th, but yeah. I think, the Drua can't play away, so their season's done. Blues will wrap that up pretty quickly. And then this is the hard one. The Highlanders and the Brumbies. The Highlanders are a team that will stay in the fight. The Brumbies are down to like their 6th choice prop as well. They've got a bit of an injury crisis in the front row, which hurts, especially when you've got, you know, an All Black prop against you and All Blacks XV prop in Jermaine Ainsley and Ethan de Groot. So I kind of go, look, there is a chance here for the Highlanders. But I think, as I've said for the Chiefs, I think Highlanders make a game of it. Brumbies come out just on top to send 1, 2, 3, 4 into the semi-finals, which I think that's some semi-finals to look forward to. Either way, even if you look at it, I think 5 and 6, if 5 and 6 do win and it's a Reds and Highlanders are in the semi-final, I think that's also those 6 teams are going to put on a great show in the semi-final. So as long as the Rebels lose, we'll all be all right. We'll wake up the next day, the world will continue. If not, the world may stop spinning and we may all burn.
Yeah, I'm gonna look. It's gonna be. I just need to see what would happen if the Rebels win. Like, I need to experience that. Like, I need to see. I need to see what would happen to you if that were to come about. Like, that's just. I need that. I want that to happen so badly.
Podcast would be cancelled for a couple of weeks. I'd go into a dark hole. I'd come out with an Iron Man suit. That's what I'd do.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't know what else to do with my time. That is us for this week. Thank you for joining us. This has been That Rugby Podcast. We are back again next week to discuss how the quarterfinals went, to make sure that the Rebels didn't end the world, and to preview the semi-finals. For now, thank you for joining us. I've been Luke. That's been Husey. Goodbye.
Peace.